is the gardener. The gardener. And he is a very important character, and we don't really find out how important he is until towards the end of the book. We get to understand why Millie became a housemaid in the first place. Now, if you want to read this book, maybe don't watch this because I don't want to ruin anything for you, but I just think I want to review this. I want to talk about it. So, Millie, we find... So, okay, let me start here. Let me just start from the kind of the beginning, right? So, Millie is someone who was working at this fast food restaurant. We find out that she has a secret that she doesn't really want to tell anybody because it's personal, but also she kind of has a background that she's afraid that employers will find out because, number one, it will prevent her from getting the job or will cause her to be fired. So, what happened to her was that she was fired from her fast food job. And, she is currently living in her car. She had an apartment, she was steady, she was doing good for herself, and because she got let go from this restaurant, she was late on rent and subsequently kicked out of her apartment, unfortunately. But she's living in her car. Now she is looking for a job, and we see that she's applied to a couple different jobs. One job called her back, said thanks, no thanks, don't worry about it. They didn't hire her, and she thinks to herself that they must have looked at her record and done a background check, but we don't exactly know what the heck she did, right? And then we see that she applied to be a housemaid for the Winchester. She goes to this house and it's this big, beautiful home. You can tell that the people who live there are rich. She walks in, it's pristine, clean, beautiful, and she really, really wants this job. And also, the paycheck, it's really great, much, much more than the fast food position. Now, when she shows up to this house, she is greeted by Nina Winchester. And, Nina welcomes her into the home, basically tells her about the job and what she would need to do, some light cooking, cleaning, watching her daughter, Cecilia, from time to time. When she's busy, she comes off as this rich it's just a small little bed, not that comfortable, but again, she's not complaining, right? And so she's like, okay, I really, really hope I get this job. So some time goes by, I think a few days go by, and then she finally gets a call back from Nina, and Nina's like, you're hired. She's over the moon happy. On her first day when she came back to the house, it was a mess, a nasty disaster, dishes everywhere, things on the floor, food crusted from days. I mean, it was just totally different from what she experienced when she first visited the house for the interview. She meets Cecilia. I had to do a little chuckle when I was reading the book because Cecilia is described as like those creepy little kid girl ghosts in horror movies in this white lace dress. Her eyes look like they were staring into Millie's soul, and she's like, oh my goodness, am I gonna have to be alone with this girl? Can you just go watch TV? Go get out of my face. You're scaring me. Just with the way that you're dressed and how you're staring at me, and you just look like a creepy doll. And so this little girl Cecilia, she seems to have an attitude, and I think one of the things I remember was that she wanted to eat. She was hungry, and so Millie offered to make her a sandwich. So Cecilia's in there watching TV. Nina is upstairs doing something for a PTA meeting, preparing for something, and Andrew's at work, and she's like, okay, fine, I have to watch this little girl too sometimes. It's scary, but I gotta do it. She makes her a PB&J, and so she gives it to the little girl, and the little girl starts freaking out. She's like, I'm allergic to peanut butter. Are you trying to kill me? And she's like, what? There's a huge tub of peanut butter. If you're allergic, why would it be there? And Nina starts to come down the steps, and the little girl is crying, really dramatic, to her mom, she tried to kill me with the peanut butter. And then Nina looks at her and she's like, did you try to give my daughter peanut butter? And she's like, I didn't know there's a big, she's like, I told you she was allergic, don't make this mistake again. And that was strange and a red flag to Millie, because she knew that Nina never told her about any allergies of anybody in the house, let alone a deadly peanut butter allergy for Cecilia, her daughter. That's something that you would remember. That's a big deal. And it was the first day and the first time that Nina snapped at her, that she saw a different side. Nina was no longer this nice, welcoming woman. She was very mean, very short, very cold, and seemed something off. So some things that would happen that we would notice is that Nina would make up lies against Millie. I will get to an example later, but basically she would say things like, well, I told you this, knowing that she never told her that, and it would make Millie question herself at some points and be like, did she tell me this? There was a time when Nina had over the moms from the neighborhood, and she would try to she would speak to Millie in a way that would embarrass her, and she would make her do ridiculous things, acting as a waitress to the ladies in her. And Nina had Millie prepare some hors d'oeuvres for the ladies, and right in front of Millie's face, the ladies were talking crap about the food and how it wasn't warm enough, and noticed on a few occasions how Nina would snap and be very mean to Millie when even he knew that Nina was lying, exaggerating, being really mean to this girl on purpose. Now, the thing that was really strange about the house was that when Millie went up to her room to put things away and to get herself situated, she noticed that when she went to close the door, that the lock was on the outside of the door. And this was a concern, of course. Okay, it's kind of scary. So Millie asked Nina, can she have a copy of the key? And Nina agreed, but the other strange thing was that she saw a bucket in the closet, and she's like, what? That's weird. Why is that there? So these things were strange to her. She had a bad feeling, but she was like, whatever, I need this freaking job. Another thing was that the gardener, Enzo, he's this really hot Italian guy with this thick Italian accent, and it seems that he doesn't speak English really at all, doesn't understand, and sometimes she will look out her window and Enzo would be staring at her, and he had this look on his face like he wanted to tell her something. Now, Enzo was the gardener for the neighborhood, but it seemed that he spent a lot of time in this garden, in the garden of the Winchesters, more than everybody else. So, what we come to find out is that the reason why Millie couldn't really keep a job or got fired from jobs or was really scared that future possible employers would know her history is that she went to prison. She was in prison for 10 years. So she committed a major crime. But she wasn't a bad person. She was a victim of certain situations, which I'll get into later. Now, there was a time when, like, Nina was gone, Andrew was gone, Cecilia was at school, and there was this package that arrived, and it was a heavy package on the, front porch, and Enzo was there, and she asked, Enzo, hey, can you help me out with this package? And so Enzo seemed like really friendly, really nice, again, couldn't speak English really well, but he understood, like, okay, heavy package inside, and so he put the package inside on the table or something like this, and he tried to tell her something. It was something in Italian, and she was like, what are you trying to tell me? So later that day, when she has cell service, because upstairs in her room it didn't have any service, when she got cell service, she Google translated this word that he was saying, and it was danger. Basically, he was telling her to get out of that house. It's dangerous. She had kind of a bad feeling, but she didn't really know why he was saying that. And, she just needed more money, right? So, when Nina got home and found that package on the table, somehow it came out that Enzo had helped bring the package in, and Nina flipped out, and she was like, don't ever have the gardener walk in my house again, he is dirty. Mind you, her house every day is disgusting. Millie would clean the house for hours, and the next day she'll come down and, Nina is throwing out dishes and milk from the fridge, milk is spilling on the floor. I mean, just a huge mess of a person. Now, she would also prepare meals, and when she prepared meals, Andrew would sometimes ask, would you want to join us? He seemed like such a nice guy. Now, this is the thing, we look at this Winchester family, we So one day, Nina asked, Millie to pick up her daughter Cecilia from school. And so she's like, fine. Now, Millie goes to pick up Cecilia from school and she's having some trouble finding out where she is because Nina never gave her any details. And she was not contactable, and neither was Andrew, so she had to go there and figure it out. And so she goes and she sees this mom that came to the house at times. And she's like, oh, what are you doing here? To Millie, and Millie tells her, Nina told me to pick up Cecilia. And she's like, no, Cecilia's coming with me and my daughter. We always take her to ballet or some other thing after school. And she's like, no, Nina told me to pick up Cecilia. And she's like, okay, let me call Nina right now and clear this all up. And so she's on the phone and Millie is overhearing the conversation and Nina seems to be upset, and the lady's like, I know, I told her I always take her on this day. I don't know either what she's doing. Then Nina calls Millie and is like, what are you doing there? Why are you there? I didn't tell you anything about picking up Cecilia. It's like, you see, it's like this pattern of, wait, gaslighting, and am I the crazy one here? I just talked to you. You just told me to pick up your daughter. And she's like, fine, whatever. Now, skipping ahead, because this will go on forever. I don't want to go into every detail of the book. Now, skipping ahead. It seems that Andrew and Nina really want to have a baby. It's something that they've been wanting for a long time. Andrew wants his own kids. Not that he doesn't consider Cecilia like his, but he wants his own kids, And they've been trying for a long time, and they have an appointment with the doctor, and they come back home, and Millie finds, seems like they were both crying and disheveled, and it comes out that Nina cannot have a baby. She can't have a baby. And this is devastating news. Now, that night, Nina is upstairs sleeping. Millie is downstairs watching television because it's midnight, everybody's asleep. And then, unexpectedly, Andrew comes downstairs and they're sitting on the couch. And he kind of opens up about how he really wants to have kids. And, it's not Nina's fault or whatever, but he really wants to have kids and he's kind of down and depressed about it. Now, mind you, there comes a moment when Millie, after this, Millie is upstairs in her room and she hears this commotion going on and this like glass shattering sound, and she goes downstairs and she hears this yelling, and Nina is yelling about the fact that it's her fault and that of course you would want somebody younger than me to have kids with. And she opens up the door and there's blood dripping from Nina's hand, and Andrew is nowhere inside. And this scares Millie. She's like, what's going on? Is Andrew alive? Where is that blood coming from? Are you okay? And Nina seems to be so annoyed. How dare you question me in my own house? Of course Andrew's alive. And then you hear water running and she's like, okay, fine, everybody's okay. And then Nina tells her, you know what? Don't come downstairs from your room next time. Actually, at night, you need to stay in your room because this house is for the family, not for you. Don't roam around here like it's your home. I mean, she is mean. Now, Andrew tells Millie that he wants to do something nice for Nina. Take her to the orchestra or to some Broadway show or something like this. It's this amazing show that he knows that Nina would love. And so she asks Nina for the day. She gives her the day and she books the tickets. Now the day comes and it seems that Nina is packing something, and she's like, where are you going? she's taking Cecilia to camp and that she'll be gone for overnight. And Andrew is there too, and Andrew's like, wait, but we have the orchestra show. And she's like, Millie, why did you book it for the day? You ruined everything. Of course I'm not free today. And she's like, but this is the day that you told me this a week ago. And she's like basically denying everything and saying that it's your fault and I'm not gonna be able to go. So Nina leaves. Now this is when we get to the juicier part of the book. Nina leaves and it's Andrew and Millie alone. And Millie is already very attracted to Andrew. She hates Nina. I mean, Nina's a total nightmare of a boss. So I guess she doesn't feel as bad for being attracted to him, but she also knows that it's wrong. Now, Andrew feels bad for Millie and says, listen, these 2 tickets, you take them, go with a friend and enjoy the show and stay the night in this nice hotel. Because actually Nina threatened Millie and told her the fact that you booked this on the wrong day, the cost of these tickets in that hotel is gonna come out of your paycheck, which would have been a couple paychecks. So she wouldn't have gotten paid over a couple of months working for free for this nightmare of a boss. And you know, Andrew stepped in behind Nina's back and said, don't worry about it, we're not taking money from you, go enjoy the show. And Nina's like, actually I don't have any friends to go see the show with. And then he's like, okay, I'll go with you. So Nina gave Millie earlier this bag of clothes. They were all white clothes for some reason. Nina always wears white and her daughter wears white. And Millie's never worn the clothes before, but she goes and tries it on, this like nice form-fitting white dress. And comes downstairs and Andrew is in like awe, like, oh my goodness, Millie, you're so beautiful. And so they get into his nice fancy car and drive into the city and go and see the show, and she's like, thank you so much. And he's like, of course we have to do dinner. They go to this nice French dinner and it's so expensive she doesn't even want to look at the menu prices because it's just so expensive. And but he's paying, of course. And they order a nice bottle of wine, get a little tipsy. And you know, they're just kind of chit-chatting about Nina and kind of how bad she is. And he's like, listen, I'm too drunk to go back, to drive back. I can get us 2 separate rooms if you want to. Long story short, they stay in one room and something happens. And now they're on their way back home, but Andrew tells her, you know, this can't happen again. I'm married. Blah, blah, blah. They go back home and Millie freaks out because she's like, oh my goodness, Nina's gonna be back home and the trash isn't taken out. She always tells me to take out the trash. She sent me a text message reminding me the night that they were out at the orchestra or the show of the trash. And basically Andrew pays Enzo $200 to go empty the trash in his truck, and Enzo goes to do it, but he gives Millie this look like she is in danger. And anyways, the trash is taken out and Millie goes back in the house. Nina comes back home and she seems fine at first, but she starts to become a bit suspicious of Millie and what exactly happened the night that she wasn't there. Things get when she gives them their food, Nina says something kind of strange, like, Millie, how was your stay at prison, or something like this, to make it known that she knows about her past, which freaks Millie out because she had no idea that Nina knew anything about that. And it seems that she's doing it on purpose so that Andrew knows. And there's this look of disappointment on Andrew's face. And, anyways, later that night, Andrew, I think around midnight, is like sitting out on the porch. So, just sitting out there doing something. And Millie walks down the steps and sees him and goes to talk to him and says, you know, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you, but I was in prison. And he's like, you know what, I don't even want to know. But he looks distraught about it. And then Nina comes downstairs, just happens to be awake too. And it's kind of awkward. And, you know, Nina's obviously upset. Now, let me just kind of move along to the really important part. Somehow, Nina, got the dress, one of the dresses, or brought the bag down that contained the white dresses that she originally gave to Millie, and she accused her of stealing her clothes. And Andrew is in the room, and she's like, Millie is a thief. She stole my clothes. What else have you done here? And Andrew is saying knew that when Millie was out, she knew that Millie was with her husband out at the show at the hotel because she saw the location. Anyways, back to the point where Andrew's breaking up with her, kicks her out the house. Millie feels good because, okay, fine, she's gone now, I can live in peace. I'm not being tormented by my boss. Andrew is very handsome, amazing man. I can be a good wife to him, a good girlfriend, whatever, to him, and, we can have this really amazing life together. And she comes back in contact with Enzo, the gardener, and, she seems happy and good, but he's still like, no, you're in danger, and you need to get out of that house now. So now it is just, Millie and Andrew's like, listen, if we really want this to work, like I want this to work, you cannot be my maid, okay? You're my girlfriend. I know you don't have a job, so just stay here until you figure it out, and hopefully you can stay here indefinitely, because our relationship will work. So don't like go around cleaning up and doing all this type of stuff. We need to act like we're in a real relationship, so Millie could relax a bit and not feel someone always over her shoulder like she has to do things. She can relax. This is a new life for her. Now, Andrew goes off to work and Millie makes herself kind of busy. And so she was reading some books that she found in Andrew's study. And Andrew comes back home and, they're happy to see each other. And she leaves the books on the coffee table. Because, whatever, you can put that away later. So, when Andrew comes home, he finds Millie upstairs in the attic and she's packing a bag. And he's like, what's going on? Where are you going? What are you doing? And she's like, oh, I actually thought that I would just move my stuff down to your room so that, I'm not just staying up here. And he's like, you know what, that's a great idea. I was thinking the same thing too. Anyways, they end up hooking up in the attic room. And when she wakes up, she has to use the bathroom. And so she goes to the door to open it. And it's locked. She can't open it. And she's like, wait, don't freak out yet. Maybe he closed the door behind him and forgot that I was in here. Where's my phone? Can't find her phone. But she sees some books. And this is the part where it starts to get scary. Now, before we get into that, let's find out what was really going on with Nina Winchester. So, Nina starts to tell her story. She was working in this restaurant, minimum wage, struggling, her and her daughter. And, she meets Andrew. Andrew basically sweeps her off of her feet, takes her back to this, beautiful home. They date for a little bit. They end up getting married, and in Nina's mind, she's like, wow, he could have anybody. This man is rich. He is handsome. Why me? This is important because Millie asks herself the same thing. Why me? He could have anybody. He's perfect. Now, they move in Cecilia, and Nina move into Andrew's house. And she meets Andrew's mother, Evelyn. She seems like an uptight kind of a lady. But whatever, she doesn't live there all the time. Now, things start getting strange. Because it seems that after they got married, Andrew's personality seemed to change. Basically, Evelyn came over to visit, and she looked upstairs and said, "Oh, there's a light on. That's wasting electricity." She seemed really unhappy about it. And it was actually Andrew's fault, but Nina took responsibility because she knew how much Andrew cared about what his mom thought. And so Evelyn leaves, and Andrew's like, "Hey, let's go up here. Can you help me find these papers for some business thing or something?" And so Nina's like, "Yeah, sure, I'll help you find the papers." They go up into the room, and when she goes into the room, the door closes behind her. And she's like, "Andrew." And the door is locked. But the room is pitch black, and there's no way to turn the light on. Or there is, but it's blinding bright light. And the window that's normally open is closed, like sealed. You can't open it, there's no light coming in. So you either have really bright light or no light at all. And Andrew's like, "You know how important electricity is, right? You left the light on. So now your punishment is either really bright light or no light at all. And you're gonna stay in this room until I feel that your punishment is done." But she's like, "My daughter, I need to get to my daughter. What are you doing? Get me out of this room." And he's like, "I will, but not yet." Now, this is the beginning that we get to see that it's not really Nina that was the problem, but Andrew is the real danger here. So this becomes a pattern where any little thing that Nina might forget to do, like for example, she forgot to dye her hair. She missed an appointment, so she dyed her hair blonde, but her roots are her real natural color, I think maybe like a chestnut brown or black, something like this. Her roots were showing, and Andrew locked her up in that room, put an envelope in there, and said, "You know, I don't like when your roots show. You need to take care of yourself. You're my wife. You need to be the best wife in this community. I'm not gonna have a wife who can't take care of her maintenance and her hair. So your punishment is you will stay in this attic until you pluck 100 hairs from your head, and not just pluck it, but the root needs to be attached." So she plucked the hairs from her head, and he counted it, and he said, "Wait, no, but one is missing a root. Pluck another 100. Sadistic. Now, she has her daughter Cecilia, right? He would always say that Cecilia needs to be in white lace dresses, like perfect. Cecilia hated these dresses. She wanted to be a normal kid. She got made fun of at school for this. But she had to wear these dresses because she knew that if she did something wrong, her mother would disappear. Disappear for days. Now, Andrew, he did something where he drugged Nina. Nina was like asleep on the bed or something, and he was the one who put Cecilia in the bathtub and drugged her too. And then he left. He went to work, and he left the water running. And he called the cops and said, "I'm so worried about my wife. Can you go and check on her, please?" Police get there, find Nina, and Nina ends up going to a mental institution for 2 months. And Evelyn is the one who's watching Cecilia, and she goes to see a shrink this illness that you have, you know, these delusions seem so real, but they're not. And if you keep saying that they are, you're gonna stay here longer. We're gonna keep putting you on different medications, and you're not gonna be able to go home to your daughter. You understand that? And it got to the point where Nina was like, maybe I am making this up. I mean, you keep telling me this. Maybe I am making this up. Maybe something is really wrong with me. Now Andrew comes to visit her one day and is like, okay, it's been a couple months now. We're taking you home. Remember, you can't have any alone time with Cecilia because we don't trust you. Nina herself knows that she would never do anything to hurt her daughter. She was horrified to find out what happened and the fact that she was being blamed for this. Now, in the back of her mind, she knew that her husband was a sick man, but she had to be very careful. She was very controlled. She couldn't leave, because if she just left with her daughter one night, that man would call the police and say her daughter is in danger. Go and get her. She would go to prison or something, back into a mental institution, and she would lose her daughter. So she was very controlled by this man, and he said, now we're gonna have a good marriage, you're gonna be a great wife, and when you misbehave, that's your room, that's where you're going, and you can't get away, so be careful. So this is what Nina's life was like. It was a nightmare. Now, remember when I said that they couldn't have a baby? Nina knew that if she had a baby with this man, she would forever be controlled by him because of that kid. It's not that he wanted a kid just to have a kid because he loved kids. He wanted it to have a kid to use it against Nina as a control mechanism, something to really lock it in. And that peanut butter scandal, when Millie came to work for them and the daughter was allergic to peanut butter. And actually, Andrew told Millie that no, she's not allergic to peanut butter. What? Yeah, she was allergic. It wasn't a deadly allergy. However, he was so sick that he knew that she had an allergy where maybe she would break out into hives or something like this, that he kept that jar of peanut butter there, knowing she was allergic, and he would actually put little bits of peanut butter in that kid's food, and when she had her allergies or her reactions, Nina knew that it was Andrew messing with her. So this was a horrible situation. Now Enzo is a key character here, because one day, she talked to Enzo because she just needed someone to tell this to. Basically, Andrew had everybody convinced that Nina was crazy, and when she starts talking about things that are happening at home, it's a delusion. She's losing her mind. You call and you tell me. She wasn't safe. And when she found that there was a woman that she could trust in the neighborhood and would tell her something, she would go right back up to that closet, because that woman would call her husband and say she's having another delusion. So Enzo is the one who can't speak any English. She just couldn't take it anymore, and she told Enzo what was happening, feeling safe that he couldn't understand, but he understood and he spoke back. And he had this tattoo of his sister's name, and the thing is that his sister was with a man that was very much like Andrew, and he attacked this man, but he was still alive, and I believe that the sister was no longer alive because of that man. And basically Enzo had to leave Italy for his own safety and could never return. And because of this, and because of what he's hearing about Andrew, he's triggered and he's like, I will take him out myself. And she's like, no, if you do that, Andrew told me that if he she seeked her out. And let me say this too. It got to the point where Nina sort of did not care as much leaving the house a mess because you're gonna put me up there anyway, gaining weight on purpose in a way because don't be attracted to me. Hopefully you're not attracted to me. So she got just kind of a slob, letting her roots grow, being messy, dirty, whatever, on purpose. Now, gaining weight because she knew that Andrew wanted her to look a certain way, be a certain way, so she wanted to do everything opposite to what Andrew would want in a wife. And then now she needed to get her replacement, someone younger, beautiful, could have kids, because she couldn't have kids. Oh, did I say this? I probably got distracted. Basically, it's not true that she couldn't have kids. She went and secretly got an IUD implanted to prevent her from having kids, and just made it seem like, oh, I'm so sad that I can't have kids. It was a protection. Now, that's why she hired Millie, the new housemaid. And Andrew was at first very livid that they were gonna have a housemaid because he needed to control his wife and couldn't have anybody in that house. But when he saw Millie, he accepted it because now his attention was diverted, just as Nina planned. And that orchestra night, she planned that too. And she wanted them to go together. And she knew that there would be an affair because she knew that she was being horrible and Millie hated her. And it was the perfect setup. And so when she left the house, when Andrew told her to get out, she was free and she was happy and had no plans to go back. But Enzo told her, we cannot leave that girl there. And Nina was like, she is fine. Andrew waited months and months after we were married to show his crazy side. And Enzo was like, I saw that light up in that room that was on. Her car hasn't moved for days. He's not waiting months. He's abusing her now. So, back to Millie. She's in the closet. Andrew comes up and he's like, Millie, are you awake? And Millie's like, Andrew, what are you doing? Let me out of this room. And he's like, I will, but not yet. You left those books on the coffee table. This is my house. You left my books on the coffee table. How inconsiderate. You need to be taught a lesson. You're going to put those heavy books on your stomach. Lie there on the ground for 3 hours. And she's like, I need to use the bathroom. Open up the door. There's a bucket. That's what that bucket was there for. It made sense to her now. So this is it. I'm not gonna get too much into detail, but basically you could see in that room, and he was watching her for months because there was a camera that was really well hidden. Now, eventually she does the 3 hours, and he does open up the door to let her out. And when he comes into the room, she pepper sprays him in the face and the eyes, takes his phone and the keys, closes the door, and locks him in. Now, the thing is that Nina put the pepper spray in the bucket because she knew the history of Millie. Now let's get into the history of Millie. Millie was in prison because she unalived someone. It was this like football player, some big guy, yeah, I think a football player, that was forcing himself upon her friend, and she went into the room and saw this Millie comes in and sees Nina in there, and she's like, I'm so sorry. And she's like, don't say sorry. This is my fault. Just leave. I'll take responsibility. I'll take the blame. Police come. Come to find out, the police that's there to check out the scene was there because his wife was the ex-fiance of Andrew before Nina. And after Andrew, she never got into a relationship. Her personality, something changed, something was shut down, and he wanted to know what was so bad about this man. And he started working in this town, and basically got his answer about why he was so horrible. So Nina got off, nobody went to jail, nothing. And now the sickest part about all of this is Evelyn, Andrew's mom, and I'm gonna read to you the ending of the book. So Nina is there at the funeral, and Evelyn is there, and they're at the wake. And basically Nina's like nervous because his parents are here, and what if they find out that it was her fault that her son is no longer alive? So Evelyn comes and she says to Nina, the people who had Andrew told her about, how they found him, and they told her about the missing teeth. And Nina's like, oh my goodness, she knows, that this baby on her, because nobody just yanks out their own teeth by themselves, although that is actually what happened, but I won't get too much into that. Now, Nina says, Evelyn, I don't. She's trying to search her words, and Evelyn's eyes go back to, her son's face, and she says, I always told him how important dental hygiene was. I told him that he had to brush his teeth every night, and when he didn't, there would be a punishment. There's always a punishment when you break the rules. What is she saying? Nina thought. If you don't take care of your teeth, then you lose the privilege to have teeth. And he knew that. He knew that was my rule. When I pulled out one of his baby teeth with pliers, I thought he understood. It's such a shame that he never really learned. I'm glad that you stepped up and taught him a lesson. Nina's jaw was on the floor, and Evelyn made one last adjustment like she always did to her son's white shirt collar, and she walked out of the wake, leaving Nina behind. And there we understand why Andrew kept that room upstairs, locked his wife and Millie in it, always talking about, I'm teaching you a lesson. When you do this, when you don't, when you forget to turn the light off, or leave the books on the table, or don't dye your hair properly, or don't do this properly, something's gonna get taken away from you, and you'll have to suffer in one way or the other until you learn your lesson. It all came from his own childhood trauma of the abuse that he suffered